Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Now today's video is going to be about cancer, and most of you know that I'm a nurse and that my partner died of bowel cancer, and I learned about bowel cancer or about cancer in general the hard way. So I'm hoping that all you guys have to do is watch a video. I live in Australia and we've got a relatively small population. We're a really large country, but with 25 million people. But of those 25 million people, 150,000 are diagnosed every year with cancer, and 50,000 of those will die. And projections show that 1 in every 2 people will develop cancer by the time that they're 85. And Australia has the highest incidence of cancer in the world. Now, I think that's probably twofold. Now, we have the highest melanoma rates. The second thing is that we have free healthcare, and so our rates of diagnosis are significantly higher than those countries who don't have free healthcare. Now, the cost to Australian government of treating cancer was $6 billion in 2013. And while economically that's a lot of money, in a social perspective, it's really important that we cure cancer. Not only from the person concerned, they really want it cured, their family really. But if that person dies, we lose their contribution to humanity. We lose their productivity, we lose their intellect, we lose their footprint, their stamp on the world. So what is cancer? And I've heard so many people say, oh, we've all got cancer in our body, it just takes something to trigger it. Well, that's balderdash. I'd like to swear, because that's just not the case. So with cancer, cancer is actually a stage where rogue cells start to invade the body and take it over. So in healthy people, we start out with the cell, and in the cell there is DNA, and DNA tells the cell how to behave. And on the surface of each cell, we have an antigen. And so the DNA instructs the cell to tell the antigen that it belongs there. And so the T cell comes along, and T cell is the part of our immune system that recognises whether things should be there or not. So you'll have the cell going self, 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 and then every now and again you'll get one that goes not self. And so the T cell will be alerted, call in the troops, and they'll get rid of it. So how does a rogue cell go from being a rogue cell that is undetected into a cancerous cell? And how does it trick the body into thinking that it needs to stay there? So we've got 4 players in the mix. We've got the DNA, we've got the cell itself, we've got the antigen that sits on the outside of the cell, and we've got the T cell. So any one of those things can have something wrong with it. So if there's something wrong with the DNA, then it's not going to send the right signal to the antigen. If there's something wrong with the cell, and it is a rogue cell, so maybe the rogue cell knows how to trick things, it may very well tell the antigen to tell the wrong story. It can also send out what's called an immunosuppressive, a little bit like a sleeping draft. And that then just turns off all the T cell's ability to pick up on anything. It's basically anaesthetised the T cell so that it just floats completely past and is completely oblivious to the fact that that's a rogue cell. Now, there can also be something wrong with the T cell itself. I'm not going to go into the T cell, but basically That's what can happen along the chain. And so we've got a lot of things going on with immunotherapy, trying to remind the body that it knows how to deal with cancer. It knows how to stop these rogue cells from turning into cancer. And a rogue cell doesn't immediately become cancer. And I'll use cervical cancer and bowel cancer to illustrate what happens. So in cervical cancer, I learnt this from previous pap smear. So ladies, go and have a pap smear. Cervical cancer is not something that you want to have. So cervical cancer goes from an abnormal cell to CIN1, CIN2, CIN3, and then cancer. So the earlier we can detect it, the less likely it is to become cancer and actually start that cascade that's very difficult to stop. And with bowel cancer, in the lining of the bowel, you actually have lots of glands that secrete things, and sometimes these glands get a little bit carried away and they grow what we sometimes call a polyp. But then sometimes you will get a rogue cell in these adenoids and they will become adenocarcinoma. And that's what Wayne had. They removed a polyp, but it had spread. So in Australia, we actually get sent on our 50th birthday, and I opened the mail on my 50th birthday, to a bowel cancer screening kit. But what it does, because cancers are typically very vascular, they actually create their own blood supply. So what the cancer screening kit does is it tests for blood in the stools. So it's not a blood test per se, but it tests for blood in the stools. And so if you show up with the presence of blood in the stools, that might be a long time before it actually shows up on the toilet paper. And so you can then go and have a further test and find out whether there's anything to worry about or not. Now, many people get polyps and they're nothing. So a polyp is just a benign lump that they can just remove, and they remove it before it has a chance to become cancerous. So what if you do get cancer? Now, even though Australia has the highest rates of cancer, it's likely because we're diagnosing people. But we have one of the highest survival rates, and those survival rates are getting higher and higher all the time. Now we have immunotherapy, we have hormone therapy, we have chemotherapy, we have radiotherapy, we have targeted therapies, we have cyberknife. And there are so many more advances going on all the time. So, do you and I have cancer? I've heard that often enough. I've heard people say, everybody's got cancer, it just takes something to trigger it. What a crock. People don't have cancer. If they have cancer, they have treatment and they get really sick. And some of them survive it and some of them die. The rest of us don't have cancer. We have rogue cells that come in and out of our body all the time, and our immune system deals with it. So the best way to not get cancer is to eat healthy, drink plenty of water, get a decent amount of exercise, get a really decent amount of sleep. People really underrate how important sleep is for the body's immune system to be able to function properly. And do all of those preventative things, particularly if you're in Australia, put your sunscreen on, even if you don't think the day is too hot. If you're an outdoor worker, if you drive in your car a lot, wear your sunscreen, wear your hat, put your long sleeves on. And for women, have your pap smears regularly. If you are sexually active, have your pap smears. And fellas, I didn't miss out on you. Go and get your prostate checked. I know it's a god-awful test. Bloody awful. But so is prostate cancer. So I hope you've learnt a little bit about cancer. And if you know somebody with cancer, please keep in contact with them. I've done a video on things that you can talk about when you're visiting somebody with cancer, and because it becomes really isolating and it's really hard. It's really hard to know what to say to somebody if they've got cancer. So I'll link that video down below. And again, if you've enjoyed the videos, please join the village, hit subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.